relativity, psychoanalysis, quantum mechanics, communism, the periodic table, the PhD, nuclear fission, the uncertainty principle, evolution theory as a formal discipline, X-rays, aspirin, morphine, the germ theory of disease, electromagnetism, thermodynamics, the Doppler effect, the Bunsen burner, every single one, thought, written, and published in German, not translated into German, originally German. The ideas were German before they were anything else. For 200 years, if you were a serious scientist anywhere on Earth and you didn't read German, you were locked out. Not inconvenienced, locked out. The most important papers in chemistry, in physics, in philosophy, in psychology were published in German and stayed in German. If you wanted access to the frontier of human knowledge, you learned the language or you fell behind. Then, in the space of a single generation, it vanished. German went from the most important language in science to almost invisible. And the story of how that happened is not the one you think it is. It is not a story about English being better. It is not a story about German science declining. It is a story about what happens when a language loses the people who speak it, and what happens to the language those people arrive in next. Welcome to the Airlearn Language Show. This is one of those stories that sounds like it should be well known and somehow isn't. We talk about the rise of English as a global language as if it were inevitable, as if it were always going to happen this way. This video is about why it wasn't, about how a different language was winning for 2 centuries and what it actually took to stop it. Before we get into it, if you've been watching this channel and you haven't tried Airlearn yet, now is genuinely a good time. Pick a language, any language you've been curious about, and just start. It doesn't take much. Link is in the description. Come back when you're done. How German built the world's university system. To understand how German came to dominate science, you have to understand what Germany built in the 18th and 19th centuries, because what was built was the modern university itself. Before Germany, universities in Europe were mostly places that preserved and transmitted existing knowledge. They taught the classics, trained clergy, produced lawyers, research. The systematic generation of new knowledge was not their primary function. The University of Berlin, founded in 1810, changed this. Wilhelm von Humboldt designed it around a radical idea that teaching and research should happen in the same place by the same people. Professors were not just instructors, they were active researchers, and their students worked alongside them in laboratories and seminars. Knowledge was not transmitted from master to student. It was produced together at the frontier. This model spread across Germany rapidly. By the mid-19th century, German universities had research seminars, research laboratories, and a new degree, the Doctor of Philosophy, the PhD, that certified someone had contributed original knowledge to a field rather than simply mastered existing knowledge. The rest of the world noticed. American universities, one by one, restructured themselves along German lines. Johns Hopkins, founded in 1876, was explicitly modeled on the German Research University. Harvard, Yale, Columbia, all reformed along German principles. The structure of every major research university on Earth today, the seminar system, the laboratory, the PhD, the tenure track, is a German invention from the 19th century. The world copied Germany's model and then, for a century, sent its best students to Germany to be trained inside the original. When you trained in Germany, you worked in German. When you published in German. And the students who came from America, from Japan, from Russia, from across Europe, they went home speaking German science, and they published in German to be read by the people at the frontier. German did not dominate one field. It dominated everything simultaneously. Chemistry first. German chemists in the 19th century built the foundations of organic chemistry, pharmaceutical chemistry, and industrial chemistry so thoroughly that the early vocabulary of the discipline is still German. Words like angstrom, Bunsen, Fahrenheit, diesel, these are German names that became universal scientific terms because the concepts were German first. Physics next. By the early 20th century, the most important physics on Earth was being done in German. Max Planck published his quantum theory in German in 1900. Albert Einstein published the special theory of relativity in German in 1905. Niels Bohr corresponded in German. Werner Heinsberg published the uncertainty principle in German. Erwin Schrödinger published his wave equation in German. The foundational papers of quantum mechanics, the framework that underlies every piece of modern technology from semiconductors to lasers to MRI machines, were all published in German. Philosophy ran alongside it. Kant, Hegel, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Heidegger. German philosophy was not one school of thought. It was the conversation that every other serious philosophy in the world was responding to. If you wanted to do philosophy in the 19th century, you did it in German or in explicit dialogue with German. Psychology was German. Freud published in German. Jung published in German. The entire early architecture of psychoanalysis and clinical psychology, the vocabulary, the frameworks, the concepts, came out of German-speaking Vienna and Zurich. Music theory was German. From Bach through Beethoven, through Wagner, through Schoenberg. Mathematics was substantially German. Gauss, Riemann, Hilbert, the entire Göttingen school. There was no field of serious intellectual inquiry in the 19th and early 20th century that German was not either leading or centrally involved in. This was not an accident of geography. It was the compounding return on having built the research at university, the institution that produces knowledge. Build the institution, train the people, and the language of the institution becomes the language of the knowledge it produces. The decline did not begin with World War II. It began in 1914. When the United States entered World War I in 1917, something happened to German inside America that had no real precedent. German was at that point the second most widely spoken language in the United States. Millions of German immigrants had built communities, newspapers, schools, and churches in German across the Midwest and beyond. German language instruction was common in public schools. German culture, music, literature, food was part of American life. Within months of America entering the war, all of this became suspect. German language newspapers were shut down or switched to English under public pressure and, in some cases, legal threat. Cities renamed their streets. Schools dropped German instruction overnight, in some states by law. Communities that had spoken German for generations switched to English publicly immediately, and in many cases, permanently. Sauerkraut was briefly renamed Liberty Cabbage. Orchestras stopped playing German composers. The practical effect on science was significant. American scientists who had trained in Germany and published in German began switching to English. The German language scientific journals in the United States lost their leadership and their contributors. The intellectual pipeline between American science and German science, built over half a century, started to corrode. But German science in Germany kept producing. The damage from World War I was real, but not fatal. By the 1920s, German remained the dominant language of physics and chemistry. The Weimar Republic years produced some of the most brilliant science in history. It looked briefly like the fracture might heal. Then, 1933. When the National Socialists came to power in Germany, one of their first systematic acts was the removal of Jewish academics from German universities. The law for the restoration of the professional civil service, passed in April 1933, dismissed Jewish professors across Germany in a single legislative stroke. What followed was one of the most catastrophic brain drains in human history, and one of the most consequential transfers of intellectual capital ever recorded. Albert Einstein was in the United States when Hitler came to power and simply did not go back. He joined the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton and never returned to Europe. Enrico Fermi, Italian but married to a Jewish woman, left for America after picking up his Nobel Prize in Stockholm in 1938. He went directly to Columbia. John von Neumann, mathematician, foundational to computer science, game theory, quantum mechanics, left for Princeton. Lise Meitner, who co-discovered nuclear fission, fled to Sweden. Leo Szilard, who conceived the nuclear chain reaction, left for London and then America. Edward Teller, Hans Bethe, Max Born, these were not peripheral figures. These were the people who were doing the most important physics and mathematics on Earth, and they did not leave quietly. They brought their research programs, their graduate students, their publication networks, and their international connections. And they switched to English. The American universities and research institutes that absorbed them, Princeton, Columbia, Chicago, MIT, Caltech, were transformed almost overnight. The center of gravity of world science physically relocated from Central Europe to the American Northeast and did not come back. The Manhattan Project, the most consequential scientific and engineering program of the 20th century, was substantially built and led by European refugees who had fled German-speaking countries. Their science was German. Their new language was English. And from that point forward, the journals they published in, the students they trained, the institutions they built, everything was in English. German today is not a small language. It is the most spoken native language in the European Union. Germany has the fourth largest economy on Earth. German engineering, German manufacturing, and German design remain globally respected. There are serious scientific journals still published in German, serious research still conducted in German, serious philosophy still written in German. But the fraction of global scientific output published in German today is a small percentage of what it was in 1900. International conferences happen in English. The flagship journals in physics, chemistry, biology, and medicine published in English. A researcher in Tokyo, Sao Paulo, or Cairo who wants to be read by the global scientific community publishes in English. Not because English science is superior, because English is where the people are. And the reason English is where the people are traces directly back to the trains that left Germany in the 1930s, carrying the people who made German the language of science in the first place. English didn't win the competition for scientific dominance. Germany left room. That distinction matters. It means the dominance of English in science is not inevitable, not permanent, not the result of English being inherently better suited to the expression of ideas. It is the result of a catastrophe, a political catastrophe that expelled from one country the people who had made it the intellectual center of the world. Those people arrived speaking German and left their mark on English permanently. The concepts, the framework, the mathematical structures, the scientific vocabulary, all of it came through and reshaped the language that received them. English became the language of science, not by producing better science, but by receiving the people who did. And here is the question the next 50 years will answer. English is dominant now for the same reason German was dominant then. It is where the institutions are, where the journals are, where the training happens. But institutions move. Journals follow people. Training follows funding. Mandarin is the language of the world's second largest economy and one of the fastest growing research sectors. The trajectory of the last 2 centuries suggests that no language holds this position permanently. German looked permanent in 1900. It was gone by 1950. Whatever language comes next will not announce itself in advance. Languages rise because people carry them. And the best time to learn one is before the rest of the world catches up. Whatever language is on your list, Airlearn is a good place to start. Links in the description. See you in the next one.